As Magnus settled into his seat across from Fischer, the air grew thick with anticipation. Fischer's eyes gleamed with a sharp intensity, betraying no hint of the age that had passed since his famed matches. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6. Fischer immediately countered with the Berlin defense. The Berlin had only risen to prominence after Fischer's time, yet here it was, as if Fischer were intimately familiar with its nuances. Magnus couldn't help but smile to himself, marveling at the depths of Fischer's genius. It was clear this game would not be like any other. Magnus watched in disbelief as Fischer, with an almost spectral calm, countered his opening moves with strategies that belonged to a future he never lived to see. The move sent a chill down Magnus's spine, as it was a clear reminder that in this realm, even the boundaries of time could be rewritten. In that silent hall, the game transcended a mere battle of chess, becoming a timeless dialogue between eras. d3. Magnus made a deliberate move, playing d3, a quieter, more flexible line designed to test Fischer's adaptability. The move was subtle, almost unconventional, but in that moment, Magnus could feel the weight of the decision. Was Fischer truly out of his depth, playing outside the scope of time? Or was there something else at play, something even beyond Magnus's understanding? He looked across the board, waiting for Fischer's response, the tension in the air now thicker than ever. Bishop c5, c3, castle, bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, bishop a7, castle, d6, knight, b, d2, knight h5. Fischer, with a calm yet calculating gaze, offered to exchange the dark-squared bishops, a move that seemed to ease his defense. Bishop takes, e7, queen takes, e7, knight c4. As the game entered the middle game, Magnus began to notice something strange. The position on the board felt familiar, not just in a general sense, but as if he had seen this exact setup before. He racked his brain trying to recall where he might have encountered it, and then it hit him. This wasn't just a game, it was a recreation, a mirror of one of his own past games. Fischer wasn't just playing as Magnus, he was replaying one of Magnus's most famous victories, move for move, but with a twist, f5. At move 11, Fischer boldly played f5, a striking departure from the move Magnus had chosen in his own game before. This unexpected thrust not only unsettled Magnus, but also showcased Fischer's unique strategic vision. The move shifted the dynamics on the board, setting the stage for a battle that transcended past encounters. Knight, f, takes e5, knight takes e5, queen takes h5, knight takes d3, knight e3, f takes e4, knight d5, queen d8. The clock ticked relentlessly, each second echoing through the silent hall. Magnus stared at the board, his mind racing. Fischer's moves were uncanny, not just brilliant but eerily reflective of his own style. It was as if Fischer had studied every game Magnus had ever played, internalized every strategy, and now wielded them against him. Bishop takes d3, e takes d3. Magnus, without hesitation, captured Fischer's knight, feeling it was the only viable move in the tangled position. The decision was swift, yet it carried the weight of calculated necessity, signaling his readiness to confront the growing pressure from Fischer's attacks. The board shifted, and Magnus knew this was just the beginning of a deeper, more complex struggle. Rook fe1, rook f7, rook ad1, c6, knight f4. He glanced at Fischer, who sat motionless, his expression unreadable. The man was a fortress, impenetrable and calm. Magnus took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. He couldn't afford to be rattled. This was chess, pure and simple, and he was the reigning world champion. Queen, f6. Knight takes d3, bishop, e6. Fischer developed his bishop, a4, rook, e8, rook e3, rook f e7, rook, d, e1. The game progressed, and each move was a battle of wits. Fischer's play was relentless, his pieces coordinating with a precision that bordered on supernatural. Magnus countered with equal determination, his mind calculating variations at lightning speed. But no matter what he tried, Fischer always seemed one step ahead. Bishop f7, queen h3, this wasn't a good move. Fischer, on the verge of playing the powerful a5, paused, his gaze locking with Magnus's. For a brief, unsettling moment, he seemed to reconsider, then pushed the d5 pawn forward instead. It was a seemingly poor move, one that handed Magnus an advantage. Yet there was an unsettling feeling that Fischer had played it intentionally. d5. Queen g3. After a series of rapid exchanges, the game transitioned into a tense endgame. In the endgame, Fischer's moves grew unexpectedly poor, yet Magnus sensed that these were not mere mistakes but deliberate, calculated choices. Each uncharacteristic misstep seemed to hint at a hidden agenda, a cryptic signal of a plan far beyond the boundaries of the match. The suspicion gnawed at Magnus, leaving him to wonder if every apparent blunder was a piece of a plan. And then, Fischer did something unexpected. He extended his hand.
"Congratulations,"
he said, his voice soft but sincere.
"You've earned it."
Magnus blinked, stunned. He had won. Against Bobby Fischer. Despite Magnus ultimately clinching victory, Fischer's moves had been strangely suspicious, as if every decision was part of a hidden design. Magnus couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that Fischer's strategy wasn't solely about winning this match. It was a piece of a much larger, enigmatic plan.
"Who are you?"
Magnus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Fischer smiled again, that same enigmatic smile.
"Maybe I'm a reflection,"
he said.
"A mirror. And so are you."
Before Magnus could respond, Fischer began to fade, his form dissolving into the encroaching shadows. But perhaps not entirely, for Magnus wasn't sure, and he didn't feel good. The room darkened as the chessboard and its pieces vanished into nothingness, leaving Magnus to reach out at empty air. Perhaps it was all just a hallucination, yet Magnus couldn't shake the unsettling doubt about whether what he was witnessing was real. The hall was empty. The chessboard, the pieces, Fischer, all of it was gone. Magnus stood alone in the dimly lit room, his heart pounding, his mind racing. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy he couldn't explain. He glanced around, half expecting Fischer to reappear, but there was nothing. Just silence.
"What just happened?"
He muttered to himself, his voice echoing faintly.